morning, everybody. This morning we've got Nancy from the Entrepreneurs Academy. You're being familiar to date with seeing Noel Davison. So Nancy, thanks a million for facilitating us this morning.
Pleasure.
This morning I'm really delighted and fortunate to, and I mean this genuinely, myself and my good friend Blaise Brosnan haven't had the opportunity in a long time to actually catch up over a coffee, as we had in previous months before March, where I'd meet him over at the Management Development Programme in the Osprey Hotel. So Blaise, thanks a million for meeting me this morning.
Okay, you're welcome, Jackie. Yeah.
Many of you from the Kildare business community will be familiar with Blaise. Blaise is one of my most senior confidants. He runs our management development program and has mentored a myriad of businesses, not only in Kildare, but nationally. And Blaise runs his own company called the Management Resource Institute. He's also an author of 3 books now, or probably into the 4th, Blaise, are you?
Yeah, I have a script of the 4th, yeah.
Plenty of time to write it. I wonder, Blaise, when you were writing the first one, you know, Jack.
Yeah, that was the second one, actually.
Or the second one, forgive me.
Yeah, the first one was...
The limiting factor. You are the limiting factor.
Yeah,
That's right. You are the limiting factor. And I suppose we'll talk a little bit about that in terms of how people are coping at the moment. But when you wrote Jack, Business Lessons from Life, Life Lessons from Business, Jack himself had hit a few challenges along the way. Would he have got through the last 8 months, do you think?
I think he would. And I think the reason he would have is because as we go down through our journey, we're influenced by lots of events and by people, right? So if you take at the moment, the COVID is hitting everyone in different ways, you know, and different people react to that in different ways as well. So there's a quotation out there by somebody, I forget who, but he says that the quotation says it's how we react to situations rather than the situation itself, which determines the outcome at the end of the day, right? So, you know, each of us have to take our own kind of patch and see what's best for us. And my contention for lots of people, particularly those in the more exposed areas, is that if at all possible to try and batten down the hatches as best you can in order that at the end of the cycle, and this cycle will move on as well as all cycles do, that you'll come out at the other end as undamaged as possible, but standing. Because it's easier to get going and exploit the new cycle if you're coming from a standing position rather than a lying position. Now, there's no shame whatsoever in a business going bust. None, right? And anybody would want to feel kind of guilty about that. And if it happens that your business do go bust or whatever, don't let that be the end of the line, you know, for anybody, right? There's always a new dawn, and you'll always be that little bit smarter the second time around. Now, obviously, you'll try and prevent that if you can, if at all possible. You're optimizing all the resources that are out there, you know, most of them coming through from the Leo office, basically. And none of us is an island. We all need help. I need help. We all need help. And I think this is where the Leos around the country, and particularly there in Kildare, I think you've done a fantastic job at, within what you're capable of doing, of helping people through this trauma, basically.
Yeah, thanks a million, Blaise. We are doing our best, and I suppose I'm just the face of the Leo Kildare. I have a team there that, like most frontline workers, they haven't been out of work since March the 12th. They've been there every day, and great credit must go to them. But we've seen, I suppose, when you and I have spoken, we've seen some good stories too over the last few months, haven't we? We've seen people that have pivoted. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I was just saying earlier on there, I was at a board meeting of one of the companies we're involved in there on Friday, and even though their sales are down 28% year to date, right, that qualifies them for the wage subsidy thing. But because they're a high labor intensive type of business, specialized business within the construction area, that bottom line is actually far healthier than it has been for the last 2 years, you know. So they would, even though they would appear to be in a very in a global sense, to be in a very difficult position, they're actually financially in a better position today. No, they don't talk about that in public, of course. They'll keep the poor mouth out there in public. But that's just a particular instance. Now, there's others, obviously, in the pub trade, in the restaurant trade, things like that. But again, different people view these things differently. You know, we have a client down in the Tipperary area, and he has three pubs. Two of them are kind of food-related pubs, and one, as he calls it, wet pub. And like his attitude is, this is an opportunity for me to buy up a few more pubs cheap.
Yeah.
You know, different people looking at scenarios differently. Now, you might say that he's in a position to do it. But why is he in a position to do it? Because he runs a good show in good times, and
Yeah.
he's not afraid to make money, you know.
And that's what I suppose, yeah, I've seen an awful lot of businesses. And I suppose taking on your mantra, you had been saying to so many people, you know, guys, you really need to work on your business rather than in it, and to understand that cash flow, what it means to the business. And I think for many businesses, they may have been doing that first time round in the last 6 months. And I think we were alarmed at how few people, you know, fully understood that whether they were making money or not making money.
Yeah, I think that's very true. But I think we should learn from history as well, but not be a prisoner of history, right? And one of the big learning lessons for me at the end of the Celtic Tiger, when we went into the recession in 2007 along there, right, is the majority, quite a majority of small, medium type of business came in at the end of the Celtic Tiger with very poor balance sheets. And why had they poor balance sheets? Because there had a lot of activity going on in their business during the Celtic Tiger, but they were not necessarily creating wealth for themselves, or not creating a buffer. But you look at the people that came into the recession around that 2007, 2008 period with strong balance sheets. And again, why did they come in with strong balance sheets? Because they ran their business that bit better in the good times. And even though they were making money, if there was another squeeze to be got out of it, they constantly went after that squeeze. In other words, they wasn't just satisfied to be average. They wanted to be better than average. And I think it's no different. The dynamic is no different than in sport. You know, you can go out and play a nice game, or you can go out to win the game. And to win the game, you know, the difference between a team that wins and loses is not that much, but it's critical all the same. There was a very interesting survey done on the the speed events in the Olympics there about last year sometime, right? And they took the last 3 Olympics and they took all the speed events, both track and swimming. And they were trying to fathom out what was the difference between the gold medal, the silver medal, and the bronze from a speed point of view. And the difference over 60, I think it was 60 events over 3 Olympics, it was less than 3% of a difference. But that 3% is critical. And it's the same in business. You know, the difference between kind of being break even or just beyond break even versus getting the extra 3% or whatever the percentage might be out of it. That's the difference that builds the reserve in the balance sheet and gives people an opportunity when the dot hits the fan, basically, as it always will. You know, there's good cycles and bad cycles, but we do need to have buffer built in the good times. Yeah.
I think what you've always advocated, particularly to me over the last 20 odd years, is that analogy of the sports is understanding and knowing your competition as intimately as if you were in the Olympics, you were going to run the 100 meters, you would know intimately what the guy next to you in the lane had for his breakfast and how many hours he trained and so forth.
Yeah, but you see, I think we have a lot of people have a different attitude to sport and business, and in my view, they're the same game. But we classify one as something we enjoy, and the other one as something we have to do in order to put bread on the table, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is, I've come across plenty of fantastic sports coaches, but bring them into a business scenario, and that they're useless. But even though they have the skill base, the same skill base required, if they could mentally understand that that business is a sport as well, but it's a sport to win it. And I
Yeah.
remember having a professor in Trinity years ago, Jeff McKechnie. You might have heard me talk about him before. Man is dead now, but I can remember 2 points he ever told us. But one of them was, and to me, it was a kind of a eureka moment for me. He said, if you could think of your business like a sport, you'd both enjoy it and you'd be better at it. Because we tend to be good at our sport or our hobbies. Why? Because we like doing them. And there's a kind of a competitive edge in relation to it. And as you say, we'll look at the analysis, the competitors, we'll do whatever analysis is required and all that. But we often don't bring the same skill back into our businesses. And I think if we did, we'd get that extra squeeze in a number of different areas out of it.
And when you look at those number of different areas, Blaise, today is another seminal moment for businesses in the country. An awful lot of my clients around the coffee table this morning, are in great anticipation as to what might happen next. It, what do you feel may happen, and how if I had my clients meeting you on a one-to-one today after this briefing, what would be the advice you would be suggesting to them?
I think that I know when I was growing up in Kerry years ago, and I'm sure it was no different in any household, but it was a no-no to be considered a selfish child. Okay? But the reality is, in business, we need to be professionally selfish because as the owner of a business, you're responsible for the ultimate commerce of that business. And sometimes that requires taking hard decisions along the way. We had a girl on a Zoom call this morning, and she's quite a good operator. But this week, she's having to adjust the number of people she has and the number of hours that they're working, right? But she's 4 months late at it.
Yeah,
And what has happened in that 4 months? She's doing it now because she doesn't have a choice.
yeah,
Whereas if she was a better businesswoman, she'd have done that 4 months ago. But what has happened in that 4 months? Whatever reserves she had left in the balance sheet are gone.
yeah,
And really, it's about we have to be commercially selfish. I know it's not a nice word, but the reality is, if you want to be more successful in business, you have to have clarity about what you're trying to achieve for your business, and you have to be commercially and professionally selfish in order to do that.
yeah,
Now, I know these are hard lessons, lads, but we're in tough times now. And if there is things you should have done with your business over the last 6 or 7 months since this thing came in, and you haven't done them for all sorts of reasons, right? I would say do it today, do it this week, because otherwise the business won't necessarily be around at the end of this cycle, and that'd be a shame, you know.
yeah. You had advocated, and I wonder, you know, uh, about cash reserves and hibernating at the initial stages
Yeah.
of business. Do you still feel that warrants it now,
Of course, well, if you
depending on the market?
well, yeah, depending on the map. But like if you look at your working capital or cash flow in your business, right? A business can't stay in business if the flow of cash is the flow out is greater than the flow in. Eventually, it catches up, right?
Mm.
So my kind of advice earlier on to people was to try and hold as much cash as they could within the business by delaying the term that they use now is warehousing, say tax and VAT and things like that. If you have to do that to stay in business, I would say do it, because there will be good times where you'll be able to work your way through that again at the end of the day, right?
Mm.
If there's any leakages whatsoever in your business of money out, irrespective of how difficult some of these calls are for you, like that girl now this morning, she's having to have difficult conversations with, quite a few staff people this morning.
Mm.
See, there's a difference between being popular in business and being a professional manager. Now, I could come on here this morning to say to everyone, you're doing a fantastic job and it's the very difficult times and we're all in this together and we'll all cry together and all this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But none of you have allocated this hour to for sobby kind of stuff, right? I'm sure you're on to try and get some guidance in relation to how do you stay in business in as undamaged position way as you can going forward. And I would say to all of you is anything you're standing back from doing at the moment that's right for your business, for whatever reason you're standing back to, will you just go and kill it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you have a better chance to come out at the end of the day. Because, I think owner managers often put themselves at the end of the queue. I think it's time for owner managers to start to put themselves at the start of the queue and walk from that a bit, you
Yeah.
know. So this is where kind of my explanation, I suppose, for being professionally selfish is about, right? It's not an easy game. Of course it's not. But it is a game.
Mm.
And, I'm around long enough in business now to have seen lots of cycles, right? And there will be good cycles again, lads. There will be good cycles again. Now, you have to do whatever you have to do in your business today in order to be standing and fit to exploit or optimize the opportunities that will arise going forward. Now, if you're lucky enough to be in a good position where COVID is actually a friend of yours from a commercial point of view, as it is for certain businesses, I would say optimize the opportunity. Don't be soft on it, because build whatever you can reserves into your balance sheet, because you'll need it again going down the road. And I know, Jackie, you and I have spoken about this before, that the frightening thing, I suppose, about business is when the COVID thing happened in March, middle of March or whenever it did, right? The number of businesses that were within a month, 4 weeks, of actually going bust at any one point in time, it's actually frightening, you know.
Absolutely. They had
Um,
no reserves to withstand any shock.
And you can only have reserves if you trade better, lads, you
Mm.
know. And the only way you can trade better is just be a little bit better at negotiating, both at the selling side and at the buying side. Be a little bit more efficient. It's not rocket science, you know. A squeeze here and a squeeze there. No, you can do it. We can do it. I was telling the lads this morning a story. And I don't know, somebody, there's one or two of you on that probably heard this story before, right? But I remember being in an MD's office, this is back about 20 years ago, one Friday evening at 4 o'clock. And a call came through for the bank manager at 4 o'clock on a Friday evening. And I couldn't but hear the phone call because there was only the two of us in the office. And he didn't mind me hearing it anyway. But the bank manager was telling him in no uncertain terms that if they didn't collect 800 grand of debtors in the next 2 months, they were going to be put into liquidation. And the man is dead since now, so I'll call him John just for the sake of it. And John was standing up taking the phone call, and you could see the blood flowing from his face, kind of a thing, right? And he sat down and he said to me, what shall I do? What can we do? Now, they had about 2.5 million out, so it was only 800 out of 2.5 million. And I said, John, you have two choices now. You either go out and collect it and have a business, or you'll be gone in 2 months' time. Now, what did I do? I went out and I collected $1.5 million within 6 weeks. Why? Because they had no choice. They shouldn't have to wait for that phone call. Now, the reason I'm telling you the story is any of you who could get a similar phone call today,
Yeah.
we'd do it if we had to. And
Yeah.
I'm saying is, assume you're going to get that phone call and tackle some of the issues that are hanging around in your business. Every business on the forum this morning, right? I guarantee you, there's issues in your business that are within your control. None of us can do anything about COVID, but there is variables within our business model that we have some control over. And I would say to you, I plead with you, and I'm challenging you as well. You know, for your sake, not my sake, for your sake, will you go and kill them? Kill them today, kill them this week. And if you do that, you'll be fitter going down the road. And part of that, you know, through the Lee office, there's a lot of help through the Lee office between mentoring, between various grants, a whole kind of portfolio stuff. Be good at that interface as well, manage that interface well, you know, and use the variables you have some control over, you know. The challenge I'll put out here, but it's also the opportunity, is can you be 5% better in 4 or 5 different areas of your business going forward? And I believe you can. Now, if you were 4 or 5% better in 4 or 5 different areas of your business going forward, what would that do for your bottom line? I think an awful lot, lads. And that's within our control. You know, a lot of the stuff that's happening out there is beyond our control. And my advice to you is, will you, for God's sake, turn off the media? They'll destroy you.
Yeah.
They're regurgitating the whole thing, and they'll depress you, really. Once a day is enough to listen to the news, lads. Turn it off, put on Lyric FM or something like that. Because otherwise, if you allow yourself to be exposed to this negativity, and one expert saying one thing, another expert saying something else, and all this kind of crap that's going on out there, it's serious, of course it's serious. But you or I can do nothing about it other than what manage the variables that are within our control. And that'd be my real wish for people in business. I think we can get through this.
Yeah, and that 5% margin difference on both outputs and the incoming items is very achievable, Blaise, and really, really achievable. I've seen it happen with so many companies that have done the management development program. And I know you and I have spoken, we're on a management development program, but we'll be looking again in January to go again with another group of people. But I suppose, dare I say, people, if you may not have had time before, well, you've abundance of time. Businesses have abundance of time now. If they're not in the good times with COVID, they certainly have times to work on their business. I suppose, I know a lot of things came out in the budget. What I'd be urging people to do is to look at their cash flow too for 2021. I know you'd have your own thoughts on this, Blaise, but I think the mistake is you've got some cushions now, you know, waivers, whether it's the rates waiver, whether it's an employment subsidy. But God, don't wait till all of that's gone to fall off the cliff then, after weathering the storm. Be working now to make the plan of what you're going to be able to do when we can trade properly again.
Yeah, I agree with that, Jackie. And the prop I'm giving you is that phone call from the bank. Think of the story I told you with that guy. That's 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I can remember that day as if it was yesterday. Why? Because it taught me a lesson as well. And I've shared that story with lots and lots of business people over the years. Lads, we're all capable of squeezing another bit in 3 or 4 different areas of our business. It's not rocket science.
Yeah.
You know, you don't need to be an Einstein to be successful in business. There's very ordinary people out there, lads, quite successful in business. It's not about academic qualifications or anything like that, right? It's just about being, as a friend of mine says, about being just a little bit streetwiser in relation to what we're doing. You know, just be a little bit smarter.
Well,
And,
I'm seeing,
you know,
sorry, Blaise, I'm seeing a load of chat questions coming up. I know Nancy's going to
Absolutely.
answer some of them for you. Sorry,
Okay.
That's it.
lost you there. I just don't want to run out of time to answer some of these.
Okay.
Perfect. Just a quick comment from Marion Egan about you were referencing the self the self being selfish. So she says, I always use the term self-full instead of
Good.
selfish. Because when my needs are met, I can then meet the needs of others and put my own mask on first, as we're told to do on a flight. And absolutely. So if it requires making some difficult decisions, you know, you've got to do that so that you have a business to invite people back to. Is that right,
Yeah,
Blaise?
yeah, well done, Marion. Can I use that again, Marion, going forward? Because, you know, all I'm doing here with any of your lads are I'm just sharing what I'm seeing out there on a constant basis. And it's a bad day for me if I don't learn something new. So thanks, Marion.
That's it.
I'll
Perfect. Thanks, Marion. We also have a question in from Deirdre O'Keefe, who's talking about her business, and she's looking at starting a new arm to the business. And competition is one, the competition is that one main provider really has the monopoly. So it's going to be a bit difficult. And so her question is, given the current circumstances, should she concentrate on her existing business promotion or go forward, take the risk, and carry on developing the new idea?
I would say a bit of both. It's if our Deirdre, I can see it in front of me. I think Deirdre, if the core business is quite solid, definitely don't ease up on that. But that shouldn't stop you looking at other options, right? And the one point I'd make there is if you're coming to a new kind of niche, which I hope is kind of complementary to what you're also doing, right? And that there's one big competitor out there, where you don't try and take the competitor on head on, right? Try and come up, as Michael Porter would say, try and differentiate yourself, give yourself a little angle in some way that's meaningful from your client perspective. Because, in other words, become a bigger fish in a very small part of that pond. Don't try and become a small fish in that big pond, right? And this is where I think that small business like yourself and any of us really, we have the opportunity because we have more flexibility of standing back, as Jackie was saying earlier on, standing back a small bit and give yourselves a bit of headspace and say, okay, what angle am I going to come at here? Well, in other words, what's my differentiating kind of advantage? And reflect that then in both the quality of what you do, but also in the pricing of what you do. In other words, support your angle with strong pricing.
Very good.
That'd be
That's
my
great.
advice. That'd be my advice to you the other way. Yeah. Yeah.
Great advice, Blaise. Thanks for that. So Maximilian Flegg has also asked a question about COVID, and that is, would you agree that we're looking at April, May 2021 for the worst of COVID? I know this is like having a magic ball, so I don't know if you want to try to address that one there.
How are you, Max? I know Max. Yeah. How are you, Max? I have no idea, Max. You'll be hoping, you know, if anybody had told us back St. Paddy's Day that we'd be where we are today, we wouldn't have believed it. But maybe it's just as well we didn't quite know then either, because maybe we wouldn't maybe fit to take it, you know. I remember, you know, we can all get kind of used to new circumstances in some ways, right? And we kind of get to learn to live with things a small bit, right? I know in your business, Max, COVID, you're in one of those very difficult areas at the moment, right? But I believe that you're resilient enough to be there at the end of it, because you know you have talents that can be utilized in different ways, right? All I can say is the cycle will move on. I've no idea when it is. We'd be all hoping that a vaccine will come and all of that. But in the meantime, we can't be waiting for these things to happen, right? Because these are macro kind of movements that are way beyond us. The only thing and the message I really want to get across to you, all of you this morning, is what can you do today, this week, this month in your business that's within your control, with a little bit of a push, another squeeze, as I call it, that might help you to be still standing reasonably undamaged at the end of the cycle. And, you know, think in terms, I think we have to have two time frames in our head. One is the immediate survival time frame. And the other one, Jackie was mentioning earlier on, is then what game do we want to be fit to play further down along the way? And I think we should use the opportunity of both of those time frames and try and get our head around that. And there's lots of help out there through the Leo office in relation to that. And what we're doing this morning is just another one of those kind of help kind of interventions. And you know, you're all investing an hour of your time this morning on this podcast, right? Now, business people always look for a return back on their investment. Now, I would say to all of you, try and get something from today that you're going to do something with. Otherwise, it has been a useless exercise. It might be nice and all that, but you know, as business people, you should always be looking for a return back from your investment.
And Blaise, you mentioned about the sport analogy earlier, and getting that, 3% if it's the Olympics, or I wonder as well, I got a private message there asking the question around analyzing strengths and weaknesses of each member of the team. For some of these folks who have a team, how can they go about doing that and looking at where they're going to go for that 4 or 5% growth?
Yeah, very good question. I think that would you all write down just one word, well, 2 words on a piece of paper in front of you, right? Write down the word measured output. Just write down those 2 words, measured output. And why are they so important? Because the market pays us for output. The market doesn't pay us for input. So if you started to manage your business around output, so if you have people in your team or whatever, what's the output of their activity? And the question you need to keep asking yourself as you go on today, this week or whatever, no matter what you're doing, keep asking yourself the question, can we invoice this? Because if you can't invoice it, lads, what are you doing? If it's not leading to an invoice, and I'm assuming at the moment, which is a big assumption, that you get paid the invoice, but at least get to the invoice stage. A lot of us are very busy, lads, but busy doing what? You see, we're kind of conditioned, and a lot of your staff members, just to answer the question specifically, you know, a lot of staff have perfected the skill of appearing busy. But what's the output? You know, and I think if that person, whoever asked that question, I think if they just work on what's the output of that job and work back from that, then I think there'll be some uncomfortable moments that will lead to good things.
And Blaise, in fairness, we can apply that to ourselves as owner managers. So if you are a one-person team, you apply that, every moment, your 168 hours in the week. What if that is generating an invoice, right? I had another question there sent in to me. So around benchmarking, and we're talking about growing our own business by 3, 4, 5%, but how can we figure out what our competitors are doing is what the question was. And is there a way to look at ourselves compared to others in our industry?
Yeah, there is, and it's simple enough, but awkward to do, and there's a pain barrier involved, right? And my advice to people is, because you don't have resources to do a lot of analysis and all this kind of stuff, is to open up a relationship with somebody that's in your space, but who's far enough away from you that you'll never be in competition. And try and build a relationship with them, because they're as hungry for information as you are. And invariably, you'll find that you're better than them at certain aspects of the business. They'll be better than you at other aspects of the business. And when you start comparing the gaps between these things, we call that gap analysis. You're starting to identify the gaps that have potential for you to improve. Now, this won't happen overnight. This is you have to go kind of through a courtship kind of period before people will start to open up, and you'll open up as well on the other side. But it has to be with somebody that's kind of in your space. They don't necessarily need to be exactly in your space, but kindly in your space, but who's far enough away from you that you're never going to be in competition. Because if you're going to be in competition, all you'll do is tell each other lies, and that's not yours. Okay?
That's
and
that's
and
great advice.
you know, so and I could get, we don't have time this morning, but any of you that have been on the management development program, you'll have had me give you plenty of examples of these things. And now it takes effort. It takes an investment of time to do this, but believe me, you'll get a fantastic return back from it. Now that's a long-term strategy. That won't do much for you today or tomorrow, but you know, we have to start today, tomorrow, building for the future as well, I think, you know.
And you never know, there may be a few golden nuggets even in that first conversation. You know, somebody's got a supplier or something like that that you can tap into that. Yeah, so that's brilliant. Thanks so much for that. You know, speaking of the management development program, Deirdre O'Keefe has asked, are you starting that this year, or is that currently on pause?
Yeah, Jackie will answer that.
And Jackie, do you want me to pop up your website there? You've got quite a few offerings on at the moment.
But if you wouldn't mind, Nancy, and I'll talk to that. We currently have a Blaise Brosnan management development program running. Nothing went on pause. The only differentiation now is that for the last few weeks since we went to level 3, it went remote. But that could happen because Blaise had already developed some rapport with the participants beforehand. And that's really needed to get the best out of management development, is that, and that's what Blaise would work on, is that personal rapport with each of the participants on the program. It's why we vet the participants. It's why we manage the number of participants, because it is our flagship program. We will run another management development program in January for sure. And we're already talking about that. And hopefully at that point, given the restrictions that may be looming tonight, we can do that in person. But we need a few weeks of a one-to-one with Blaise, with the client, in order to make that work. As you can see from the website, just guys, again, Blaise are talking about inputs and then outputs. Guys, I can't imagine a business that is not going to be affected by Brexit. And again, forgive me. Forgive me about that. People buying stock, people trading in currency. You know, it's not all about importing to or exporting to the UK. Just be mindful of the whole supply chain that you might be involved in. So I'd urge you to get on and look at the Brexit supports that are currently there, so that you don't have two battles in your hand at the one time. You'll see plenty of mentoring. We've never had as much opportunity for people to access mentoring. And again, all available on the website. If you don't see something, or you see something booked out, just send an email to local enterprise at Kildare Coco. Let us know that you're interested. You see it's booked out, because where there's demand, we're meeting it at every opportunity. We've had our biggest training year to date. Last year, we trained some 1,800 businesses in the entire 12 months. This year, we've had nearly in excess of 3,000 businesses involved in training. And huge amount of investment gone in. You're all very well aware of the trading online vouchers. If you've already drawn down a trading online voucher, there's an opportunity if you want to look at considering a second one. If you've already traded and if you've fulfilled the first one, there's an opportunity still to get 90% funding, €2,500 or 90% of the fund. You'll never get as cheap or as easy access to cash to build that resilience of being available to clients 24/7 online. And I'd urge you not to lose that opportunity this year. That'll reopen next week once we have the last batch done. Yeah, so that's where we are. I'd urge people to continuously look at the website. It's constantly being reviewed and updated. You should really be linked on to our social media and our newsletter, because Aoife does a superb job at updating that on a daily and sometimes hourly basis. Have you another question there for Blaise, I think?
I do. I have another question for Blaise from Bernie Dillon, who's saying that she's in a difficult position at the moment where taxes need to be done for clients, but some of them have no means of paying me at the moment. So she's in a very difficult dilemma now as to whether I should continue or whether she should continue to do the work with hope of getting paid or not doing it and being concerned that the clients will run into the possibility of getting into trouble with the CRN revenue. So what do you think, Blaise?
Very difficult one. I know, Bernie. Very difficult one. From the client's point of view, the accounts need to be done, even though they can warehouse the actual tax thing itself, right? From Bernie's point of view, these are judgment calls. If you have a client and you know, a genuine client, right? And you know that client is maybe going through a serious cash flow scenario at the moment, but will be there further down the road. My instinct would be to stay with that client and facilitate them through the kind of the dip. If you have somebody that's not going to be there at the end of the day, I think you actually have to make the hard call.
Thanks, Blaise.
These are judgment calls. They're not easy, but you know, when I talk about being professionally selfish, that starts with us first. And Bernie, like any other person, she has a business to run. She has overheads to cover. She has only X number of hours that she has available, and she's not a charity. You know, and I'm not necessarily talking about Bernie. I'm just talking about the you know, that type of business or any type of business for that matter, because we're not charities, lads.
Yeah,
you know, we're commercial businesses. You know,
I think Bernie's challenge is a common one for businesses where they have relationships built up. They understand that the client may not be good for the payment this month, but like you say, it's a judgment call, and it's not one that, Bernie, you're suffering on your own. I've heard a number of businesses, whether it's web developers or whether it's you know, accountants, they're all challenged as trying to keep themselves afloat, but trying to support others. And it goes back to that self-full piece that we spoke about earlier. How much can you be self-full? How much of you can you give without going under yourself? And then you and the other 40 little companies that you're working with, Bernie, are gone as well. So, you know,
and I think that's, you know, you have to be professional in that space, right? Like we'll all do, and our hearts would tell us. You see, another point I maybe I might be useful to you is when you're in business, in my view, is a pragmatic process. Okay. And when we're in business, we should use our heads. When you're at home, use your hearts. Not the other way around, lads. If you mix those two up, you'll do neither very well and you'll be in trouble. Okay. Now we'll all bring a bit of both into it, but business is pragmatic and it's professional. That's the professional side of our business. And the most successful business people that I know and have been dealing with for years, and that they tend to be two characters. When they're at work, they're very professional at what they're doing. But when they're out of work, in other words, in the social environment, the home environment, they're different people. If you're the same person at work as you are at home, you have a problem. At two different stages. You know, if you take an actor, an actress, somebody on stage, right? While they're on stage, they're acting in that professional capacity. When they come off stage, they're themselves. And I think when we're at work, I think we'd be far better at it if we realized we were on stage. That was the professional part of our kind of day or week or whatever it is. And when we're off stage, then we're ourselves.
Yeah, that's a great closing comment there. Thank you so much for that. Jackie, I'll give it over to you for any closing comments and we'll call it a day.
Thank you very much, Nancy. I suppose there's been a number of takeaways offered there by Blaise. You know, squeezing that extra percentage, whether it's 2%, 3% or 5%. Looking after yourself first and foremost. And can I just echo that? Please look after yourself physically and mentally. you all own businesses that I've known to grow and love and champion. But don't let that define you. You know, you need to be looking after yourself first and foremost, then look after the business. And we won't be wanting in the level of support that's going to be available for you. And there will be better days to come. In terms of the takeaways, as I said, there have been a number. I'd urge you to act on them. And some of you have a little bit of, dare I say, Blaise, some of them don't have last week's homework done yet. Those that were on the call last week will understand, but Emma Murphy has done her homework from last week. Okay, and one of them was that when they were on these calls, it was an opportunity to profile where they've come from, and they're giving their business a shout out. And I see Jigsaw, Alison in Jigsaw also is doing that very well. And while my big head is probably in my way, I got mine too. So we suggested last week that they'd use an opportunity. So some people have 2 weeks homework to do next week. So we'll be looking to see have they started to work. And again, just in terms of Alison and the work we do with Jigsaw, we're still recruiting for lean. If you want to have a good, clear lean, look at your business, look at your costs, look at your inputs, look at your outputs. That program we're running, we're filling it fast at the moment, so contact the office. I know expressions of interest are on the website. Put it on, we can discuss how payments will work thereafter. Don't be worrying about that. The other thing is, I'm urging you all, if you haven't already looked or put your product on Shop County Kildare, please do so today. It's a free online platform in order to expose yourself to a greater audience. And I'd also urge you to shop local. Please support your peers, your colleagues, because we need to keep each other afloat. Okay. Thank you once again to the Entrepreneurs Academy for hosting us. Thank you, Blaise, for having coffee with me this morning. A joy and pleasure.
Thanks, Jackie.
You know, guys, please, you know,
my last bit of advice, Jackie, to all the people around this morning is keep in touch with the Lee office, because there's a whole portfolio of supports in there, and anything they haven't, they'll be able to lead you to something, you know, because we do need help, but we have to be honest enough with ourselves as well to kind of ask for it. And because none of us is the full shilling, I'm not, you know, and we all need help, but we, you know, nobody will come knocking on our door and say, can I help you? We have to show a bit of initiative in relation to that. So 2 time frames, the immediate time frame and the longer, more strategic one. But do something uncomfortable for your business today, this week, would be my strong advice.
All right. Thank you, Blaise. And
okay.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Yeah, folks.
See you next week.
Cheers.